In Argentina, the government of Javier Milei announced increases of up to 150% in electricity tariffs for users in the metropolitan area of Buenos Aires. In Palestine, at least 11 people were killed during airstrikes by Israel on Rafah, where 1.5 million Palestinians are taking shelter. And in India, a major fire ripped through a paint factory on Friday, killing at least 11 people and injuring 4 others. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. In Argentina, the government of Javier Milei announced this Thursday increases of up to 150% in electricity tariffs for users in the metropolitan area of Buenos Aires. The Secretary of Energy established that the new tariffs charged for the metropolitan area of Buenos Aires, which will lead to increases of between 65% and 150% on average, depending on the economic level of the users. Within this framework, it pointed out that a monthly update mechanism will start to be applied as from April. The rate hike in electricity comes in a context in which the National Gas Regulator has already announced that it will analyze the rate increases requested by the gas distribution and transportation companies at the public hearing in January, which will go up to 704%. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro announced the creation of a special presidential command of the 1-4-10 system of good government. On Thursday, the Venezuelan president affirmed that the command will serve to combat bureaucracy and to improve the efficiency of his government's plans in the national territory. Likewise, the creation of the command will guarantee the protection and welfare of Venezuelans and will also contribute to the recovery of the real economy and the social rights of the people. The Venezuelan head of state also condemned the seizure of the Venezuelan airplane TeleSUR in Argentina, pointing out that the government of Javier Milei is the hero of the Venezuelan ultra-right.
The bandit Milei stole the plane from Venezuela. Javier Milei, the hero of the ultra-right, are the surnames. That same hero of the ultra-right are the surnames stole a big plane from Venezuela, from you, the workers of Conviasa. Now Milei is a hero. Milei, the crazy Milei, he pretends to be crazy or he is crazy or both, but he stole a plane from Venezuela.
In this context, deputies of the National Assembly of Venezuela rejected the seizure of the Venezuelan airplane TeleSUR in Argentina. During Thursday's ordinary session, Congressman Pedro Infante indicated that the seizure of the aircraft represents a value of at least $83 million, in addition to being an attack on the operational capacity of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. The deputy also stated that the seizure of the aircraft by the United States was carried out in complicity with the government of Argentina.
We have proposed in this National Assembly to debate a draft agreement to condemn, repudiate, reject the blatant theft of an airplane that is property of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Now the people who see us and listen to us will say, well, what is that airplane? They should know that Venezuela owns a Boeing 747-300. That is a huge plane, one of the biggest planes in the world, a cargo plane, a plane that also has a cost of approximately $83 million. People of Venezuela on February 12 took off from Argentina a plane that cost $83 million and that belongs to the people of Venezuela. They just stole $83 million from us. That is that TeleSUR plane, property of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
And we stay in Venezuela, where the government announced the suspension of activities of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in the country. Foreign Minister Ivan Gil assured that said office has shown on multiple occasions its bias against the Venezuelan government policies, failing to comply with its mission to ensure respect for the human rights of the Venezuelan people. Therefore, Gil asserted that the personnel of said office must leave the country within a period of no more than 72 hours.
The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela announces its decision to suspend the activities of the Technical Advisory Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in Venezuela and to carry out a comprehensive review of the terms of technical cooperation described in the letter of the understanding signed with said office in the next 30 days. For which reason, it requests that the personnel assigned to this office leave the country within the next 72 hours, until such time as they publicly rectify before the international community their colonialist, abusive, and violating attitude of the United Nations Charter.
In other news, Haiti's government announced on Wednesday that it is working for a formal agreement with Kenyan officials to secure the long-awaited deployment of a police force from the East African country to combat the rising wave of violence in the Caribbean nation. The Ariel Henry government indicated that it is working on a memorandum of understanding to set a deadline for the arrival of the Kenyan police forces on Haitian territory. The deployment was requested in October 2022 and approved by the UN Security Council a year later. President William Ruto persists in landing the security mission in Haiti, despite the judicial block issued by the court in Nairobi. The court at the time was stressing that it would be unconstitutional to deploy officers abroad unless there was a reciprocal arrangement in place with the host government. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Palestine, at least 11 people were killed on Thursday night during airstrikes by Israel on Rafah, where 1.5 million Palestinians are currently taking shelter. Local sources confirmed that Israeli occupation forces shelled two houses in Nasser neighborhood east of Rafah, resulting in the killing of 11 Palestinians and multiple injured. Earlier in that evening, at least 2 people were also killed and others injured in the attacks in East Jabalia in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Search and rescue teams continue their efforts to locate possible survivors. Since last October 7th, Israel has killed over 28,663 people, including 12,000 children in the Strip, while more than 68,000 people have been wounded. Israeli army attacks continue in Gaza. The attacks target refugee camps and the civilian population. Our correspondent Noor Harasin with the details.
Israeli attacks on Gaza continues, and in highlights in northern Gaza, the Israeli warplanes targeted several neighborhoods, killing 28 people from the Suleiman family. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, 9 of them are children, 9 of them are women. The ministry also said in a statement that this family was totally erased from the civil records of Gaza. Talking about some of the highlights in Al-Nusayrat refugee camp in Middle Gaza, the Israeli forces killed 12 members of Rayyan family. 7 of them are children here in Rafah and overnight. And even though until now Rafah is considered as a green area and no clear evacuation order was submitted to the people of Rafah, but the Israeli warplanes continue targeting homes in densely populated areas in Rafah. 10 people were killed in Israeli airstrikes on Rafah overnight, and these airstrikes actually targeted very densely populated areas like the Zu'rub neighborhood, the TeleSUR neighborhood, the Ashabura refugee camp. The Palestinian Health Ministry also mentioned the number of people who are missing. We are talking about more than 8,000 people. So actually adding this number to the number of death toll here in Gaza, which is more than 28,000, we are talking about more than 36,000 people that were killed or are missing here in Gaza since the 7th of October. Talking about some of the updates inside the Al-Nasser Hospital. The Al-Nasser Hospital is the biggest medical complex in Khan Yunis city, and it was under Israeli tanks blockade over the past days. Now, Ashraf al-Qudra, who's the spokesperson of the Palestinian Health Ministry, is saying that the Israeli forces are locking doctors and patients inside the hospital. No one can move around. Actually, people are dying. According to the doctor, 3 people died because of the lack of oxygen and fuel and electricity inside the hospital, calling upon the international community to stop this Israeli attack on the Al-Nasser Hospital. Nur Harazin, TeleSUR, Gaza.
On Thursday, the Council of the Arab League has affirmed that Israel's commission of the crime of forcibly displacement of the Palestinian people constitute an attack on the Arab national security. In an extraordinary session of permanent representatives on Thursday, the Council expressed concern over the unprecedented conditions in Rafah, the southernmost city in the Gaza Strip, along with the border with Egypt, citing Israel's plans and intentions to forcibly displace approximately 1.5 million Palestinian citizens there outside of the Palestinian territory. The Arab League Council also denounced the ongoing aggressions against the Syrian Arab Republic and the Republic of Lebanon. The aggressions include killing of civilians and the destruction of homes and infrastructure in violation with the sovereignty and territorial integrity of both states, as well as international law. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva met his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in El Cairo on Thursday for talks over the situation in Palestine. During the talks, Lula expressed his government's position regarding the conflict and accused the Israeli occupation forces of carrying out a genocidal war on Gaza.
Brazil has strongly condemned the attack carried out by Hamas against Israel and the act of taking hostages. We condemned and spoke out against the terrorist attack. But there is no justification for the Israeli response to defeat the Hamas movement. Unfortunately, it is killing women and children, which is something that we have never seen in any war, that I have knowledge of.
The Greek and Palestinian governments insist on finding alternatives to stop Israeli invasion of the Gaza Strip and ensure access to humanitarian aid. Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki, in talks with his Greek counterpart, stressed the lack of aid due to the blockade and restrictions imposed by Israel. He also indicated that the idea of the Israeli regime is to expel all Palestinians abroad. Al-Maliki also referred to the increase of violence in the West Bank, calling for an immediate ceasefire.
For us, this is very important, and that's why we talked about how to stop the invasion of Rafah. We talked about how to bring humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip, which is certainly scarce because of the barriers and conditions that Israel puts on the entry of such aid. And this aid must enter in large quantities and must enter all areas, including the northern part of the Gaza Strip. We talk about preventing displacement, regardless of its names. This displacement that aims to drive the Palestinian people out of the Gaza Strip abroad.
And Lebanon will submit a new complaint against Israel to the UN Security Council following the aggressions against civilians in the south of the country. Acting Prime Minister Najib Mikati confirmed this on Thursday. According to the X account of the Lebanese government, the chief executive asked Foreign Minister Abdullah Bouhabib to urgently condemned before the United Nations the persistent Israeli attacks, the killing of citizens, and the massive destruction, in particularly what happened on Wednesday in Navatie. It is also underlined that the Speaker of the Lebanese Parliament, Nabi Berri, and the head of the Resistance Loyalty Bloc in the Lebanese Parliament, Mohamed Rab, pointed out that the racist character and the impossibility of Israel to coexist with human beings. On Thursday, Syrian army units fought violent clashes with terrorist forces of the Islamic State north of Damascus. According to military sources, the fighting occurred in Duisan desert, where several terrorists were killed, while 8 Syrian army servicemen also lost their lives. State security forces intensified their patrolling operations in Al-Badieh region, while fighter bombers launched raids on terrorist headquarters in Sukna and Palmyra areas. Damascus denounced that the Islamic State intensified its attacks following the recent U.S. aggression against military points of the Syrian army and its allies east of the country. We now have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In India, a major fire ripped through a paint factory on Friday, killing at least 11 people and injuring 4 others. According to firefighters, the fire started in the evening hours on the ground floor of the factory, trapping the victims who were on the upper floors. The building, which also houses a chemical warehouse, is located in the Alipur area in the north of New Delhi. In total, 22 fire engines were needed to extinguish the flames completely and remove the bodies after 5 hours of work by rescue forces. The local media in Myanmar on Friday reported that thousands of people are seeking to leave the country following the announcement of mandatory military service. In this sense, locals lined up at the Thai embassy in Yangon with the intention of leaving the country after the announcement of the new measure. Meanwhile, the country's military said last weekend it would enforce a law that allows all men between ages of 18 and 35 and women between the ages of 18 and 27 to serve in military roles for at least 2 years. The law was drafted in the year 2010 but was never exercised, and it is unclear of how it's going to be enforced now. South Korean trainee doctors threatened to resign, opposing a government plan to drastically increase the number of people who can seek a medical degree in a move that could shake the healthcare system. Interns and residents at 5 major general hospitals groups, including Seoul National University Hospital, plan to submit their letters of resignation en masse on Monday and walk off the job at 6 a.m. the following day. This action due to the proposal from the government of increasing the current enrollment cap at universities offering medical degrees with the addition of 2,000 more slots to reverse a shortage of doctors in the country. The labor action could lead to disruptions in surgeries and prompt a wider collective action among more than 12,000 other senior doctors in the same labor group. On Wednesday, Russia's President Vladimir Putin announced at a future technology forum meeting that his country is on the verge of creating vaccines against cancer. The Russian leader added that he hoped that the vaccines could be used soon and effectively. New discoveries in the field of medicine, methods of prophylaxis and treatment should be available to people and widely used in the primary healthcare sector. On the other hand, Putin said that during the commercialization of advanced scientific solutions, when the intellectual property rights are transferred to producers, the research teams should receive a deserved remuneration, the so-called royalty, the volumes of which should be calculated according to regular methodology. and Greece has become the first Orthodox Christian country to legalize same-sex marriage despite opposition from the church and some politicians. The vote, which came after 2 days of debate and weeks of public reactions, will now legally allow same-sex couples to adopt children as well. People in favor of the vote celebrated and cheered on the streets of the capital, Athens, while those who opposed, including many identifying with the Orthodox Church, rallied in protest. Greece had until now lagged behind some European neighbors in the 27-member bloc due to opposition from a portion of the socially conservative nation, especially from the Orthodox Church. The country has now become the first country in southeastern Europe to have passed legislation legalizing same-sex marriage. In Italy, more than 1,000 farmers staged a new day of protest in rejection of falling incomes and rising production costs. Several farmers' groups have been organizing protests since the beginning of January from Sicily to Turin. Protesters' complaints range from the fuel cost to EU environmental regulations designed to mitigate climate change, but that they claim are damaging their livelihoods. For its part, a delegation had earlier visited the offices of the European Union to deliver a document with its demands. Meanwhile, in Spain, farmers and stock breeders are also protesting with tractors in front of the Ministry of Agriculture in Madrid. The Minister of Agriculture, Luis Planas, announced a package of measures that, in his opinion, responds to the 3 basic elements raised by the sector, which has been protesting for more than a week with road blockades in different parts of the country. In this sense, demonstrations have also been replicated in other European countries due to the bureaucracy and complexity of European regulations, the low prices at which they can sell their products, and the competition from foreign goods. On Thursday, members of opposed parties to Macky Sall's government were released from prison in Senegal amid a political crisis gripping the country. In this regard, the African nation is expecting the Senegalese president to take action to appease public opinion after intense protests and international concern following his decision earlier this month to delay presidential elections. It should be noted that during the demonstrations, at least 3 people died as a result of police repression. Precisely, various opposition and civil groups used new calls for demonstrations on Friday and Saturday. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.